Okay, so we'll move on to Jacob's presentation. Jacob's generously agreed to be the second victim in the presentation of the subgroup results. And I'll turn it over now to Jacob.
Okay, I'll try to share my screen. Hopefully it will work. Okay, before that I plugged in some links in the chat. Those are links to our working groups. What I'll be presenting is a white paper that was composed by two working groups together. The first one is the Model Reproducibility, Credibility, and Standardization subgroup. I'm talking about subgroups, not working groups. It's all viral dynamics working group. You can see Sharif here is my co-lead here. And he'll briefly come in and talk about some things related to reproducibility. However, in my sins, I signed up to lead more than one working group. So the other working group is the integration working group. We have multiple co-leads there. We have Wolf Bodness, Jan Liu, and Robin Thompson. So, and this group was actually integrated from several other working group subgroups that were created at the beginning. We're trying to channel as much as possible together. So you'll find integration within host and population scales in this working group, the subgroup integration within and across scales, and ensemble modeling. All of those are integration processes that we cover in this subgroup. So if you are interested, we created those SimTK sites. If you're interested in any of those topics, please sign up. We have a mailing list. You can join through here. If you press, you'll have the ability to subscribe here. We started the activity I'm showing a few months ago, around December, and I'm showing the some of our activities. You can actually find out what we're doing in December, mostly integration. And I saw Filippo Castiglioni here online, so he was active there. Later on, we talked about some other issues, and now mostly we're talking about the white paper. The last link I sent you is for the white paper itself. White paper is accessible online. I will bring it in for a second. This is the white paper, and it's all done as a Google Docs. And as you can see, it's quite long with many, many references. It was composed by contribution by many people, and I'm going to talk about it later. It started as two different papers. Each working group, each subgroup had its own paper, but then we figured out there's a lot of commonality, and we just decided to integrate them. And what you're seeing now is the fully integrated paper. The integrated version I took, and I did the editing. So basically I'm the one who's editing here, but I made sure that I take all the references from the original two papers, and each one of the contributors, you'll see in a second, contributed text there. I tried not to delete anything unless absolutely necessary, just to make things possible and readable. So anyone who contributed even a few lines or a few references supposed to be represented here to some degree. And I summarized everything, and I'm going to talk about this briefly. I also, as you can see, we have many, many contributors, 17 of them. We had one more contributor who decided not to be affiliated. You can see the discussion publicly on the mailing list. So I'm not sure if I should say his name or not, because he actually contributed quite a bit about annotations, but he's not on here on the list. There is one more contributor who was anonymous, somehow slipped in at some version, added the line, and we couldn't locate who the person was. So since it was one line that is not in the paper, the person is not here. Otherwise, you will find all of the names here contributing, and you can actually trace back exactly what they contributed, because Google Docs does support versioning, and you can actually see who contributed what. So I presented the working group, the subgroups. I presented the contributing author. One more thing, Sharif has still not approved the paper. Sharif, hopefully you'll approve it. all of the other contributors have approved the version I'm showing you now, except from Sharif, but he'll jump in and he'll say what he wants about this paper later on, because he has a part here that he will speak about. I looked at the chat and I saw some of the contributors are here, so maybe I'll try to redirect some of them so they will explain what they contributed. But I asked it to be 1 minute. So the introduction itself was written mostly by, actually not mostly, but Eric Ferguson started the introduction. He explained why models are important and why the old SIR model is becoming obsolete and why there's a need for better models. But then James Glazier and several others added. And Winston Guerrera, I saw him also here on the chat. He contributed something in the introduction. Later, some of this text was moved to a different section. But Winston, you want to say something about what you contributed? He's not jumping in, so maybe maybe he'll stay to the room for later on. The next thing we were discussing about credibility of models, and John Rice, he actually was contributed quite a bit about that. So John, if you jump in for a minute and say something about what you were talking about, because it led us to many things.
Yeah, my input pretty much was around the concept of model credibility. And that's my background for a lot of years in defense before I retired 12 years ago and got involved in the stuff you guys are doing. But my input was from the perspective of a co-chair for the dissemination working group with the very simple thesis that effort to disseminate models that cannot be shown to be creditable is probably more damaging to the modeling and simulation effort than it does good. And two of the key things going on there right now is that on the industrial side, commercial side of modeling, where more medical industry is dealing with regulators, there has been huge movement toward the development of standards specifically associated with the accreditation of a model. And so we have the FDA who says, if you want to submit data for clinical trial consideration that came from a model, we, the FDA, have to be the accreditor. And so the added theme to this paper was modelers are not the accreditors. Those of you who build models do not accredit your own models. Your only responsibility is to provide all the detailed information that somebody who wants to use the model has to have so that they can accredit it. And then the responsibility for the results of using a model rests on the user, not the modeler, because it was the user who decided that that model was appropriate for their use. So the utilization theme and that kind of stuff leading to credibility and where the standards for documentation are going was my input.
Yeah, and this led us to something that Sharif actually noticed when John was talking about this. So Sharif, jump in and please say and explain the diagram and explain your part here. It's the next section.
So I added about this reproducibility in the manuscript because that's the starting point. If you cannot reproduce the model, then there is no question of credibility or using the model or integrating the model. So that's the core issue and the first issue. So many of you might have attended my talk where I showed that the results of our analysis where we analyzed about 455 models published in several peer-reviewed journals and found that about half of them could not be reproduced based on the information provided in the manuscript. And we found several issues that many informations were missing or incorrect. So you cannot reproduce. So many do not share the codes, or they share wrong codes or provide wrong information. So all these different small aspects are very essential for reproducibility of the model. I think in the later part of the manuscript, we discuss in details each and every aspect. When we have models in different codes, it's going to be difficult to put them together and reproduce them. So I think I will leave Jacob to speak more on that. But in my case, in my section, I was focusing on the reproducibility aspect, and there are many other general aspects which are touching upon the reproducibility. So here we started with this reproducibility. First, the model should be reproducible, and then it should be credible enough. It should have enough information that we could use it, and it should tell the purpose of the model so that we can utilize it properly. And then it comes to integration, where we can integrate multiple models and get the broader picture. I think I will let Jacob take on from here and explain further.
Yeah, so the diagram that Sharif created here actually explains well why the subgroup for credibility, reproducibility, and standardization is related to the integration one. We add a lot of topics together because you cannot integrate unless you have all of the pipeline of things that build the model, meaning it's reproducible, we believe it, it's credible, and we can use it. Only then you can integrate. So this led us to many, many topics by many contributors. We don't have enough time to speak about it, and the entire paper is 20-something pages long. So I'm going to try to give some glimpses and briefs of what we did, but this table summarizes what we came up with. This is the work for that people did for several weeks. Integrated as best as possible. You can integrate work by so many people. So we have difficulties on one side, and we have expected or proposed solution on the other side. The solutions are not 100%, but those are like glimpses of things that will maybe evolve in the future. But we do need to solve those difficulties. Most of them we have solutions to some degree, some we don't. So we talked about credibility already. I will skip it. Basically, we want better practices, the solution, and documentations and tests. However, we have a problem with model validation that the team didn't come up with solutions. And the model validation comes from two different aspects. One of them is multi-scale models. You don't have necessarily data from all scales. So this is why it's difficult. More than this, if we're talking about forecast models, well, you cannot really predict the future. How can you get the information from the future to validate against? So basically, those are two difficulties discussed. We didn't have any solutions there, although there are some existing ones in the literature to some degree. Or we've focused on other problems that we see, and there are many more other difficulties in the way of modeling. One of the first ones, models are written in different languages, and you can see actually in the mailing list of us communicating and trying to convert a model. I think it's Robin Thompson and William Hart had a model, and I tried to integrate it, but they wrote in MATLAB, I was in Python. Oh, the data doesn't transfer. Oh, we have to do something else. Those are difficulties that exist all the time. However, good thing is that the other people thought about this problem. There's a whole community with the system biology markup language, and which is later joins the community of something called Combine, which combines many communities that are trying to solve those problems. System biology markup language, or short SBML, provides a solution which is a language that allows you to represent models that can be implemented in later in other systems, other tools. It's not 100% a standard. It's something that they are trying to standardize. There's still a lot of work in this specification to do to make it a standard, but it is one of the best solutions that are available today towards that. Also, we want people to better document and annotate whatever they're doing. Another problem we discussed is even if you can...
I just need to warn you that at 4 p.m. your talk officially ends and you have less than 7 minutes.
Okay, I'll run it through. So I'll just almost read this. Models are hard to locate. There are several solutions, and you can see here listed a few repositories. Biomodels is one of them, CMCK, IMAG Wiki actually have some, and there's a new one called Model Exchange. People have to know about those existing. We have problems with platforms that allow you to execute models, and this is also to John, the simulation working group, because if you can execute models on platforms that people can use and collaborate online and see the results of the models, it will help us. There's some of them that appear, biosimulators and non-biosimulations. We have models that themselves require adaptation. For example, we were integrating multiple infectious models. Some of them were expressed as density functions, while others were expressed as relative to maximum infectiousness, so you have to calibrate there. Also, there's an issue of scales, and scales have to do with units. We took a mortality model by Filippo. He's here. His scale was time step is 8 hours, while I needed 1 day. How do you integrate this? Well, this is simple. It's translation of units, which is our next section. However, units are not standardized, and translation of units is really a mess. If you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you'll find that there's like tens of thousands of units available. And I have to declare conflict of interest there. I have a solution called clinicalunitmapping.com. Which is supposed to integrate multiple standards using some machine learning. This is one solution, but in the future there might be others, because there are multiple standards, IEEE, UCUM, CDISC. There exist, even units are not have multiple standards to use for. So it's amazing that we are here in 2021 and still don't have solutions for this, but we might in the future. Data measurement also and definitions are a problem. Even diseases in clinicaltrials.gov, when you go and look at the definitions of outcomes, they differ. But within the models, how do you decide where a model does something? Like we have Castiglione mortality model. Where does he decide to put the cutoff to decide the organism dies because enough cells died? Those definitions are important. So it requires some solutions like human interpretation or new measurement devices. And actually unitization, if I see Hanna Dubowolski is here, so she contributed something there about new devices not having to measure the data differently about how much virus it is. Hanna, you want to join in? She's not responding, so I'll just skip it. We have problem with annotations. There's an organization called Combine that has some policies about it. Read this in the paper. We also have several other problems like implementation barriers. The models we see today are the ones that pass the implementation barriers. We still have many models that are out there that people have to implement, and we have to solve those. So the solution there is better education. And again, I'm skipping many things. The paper has many more other aspects. There's a licensing problems all across the way. Open source licenses, even if the word sounds nice, they're actually incorrect. Most of them are copyright based, meaning, and copyright is a legal restriction tool. So you cannot always use it. Oh, we're done?
We're going to have to why don't you leave your slide up and
okay.
Let me simply call for other business, and then we'll have time. You'll have your half hour to discuss these issues. But
Okay.
I have to formally close the meeting.
That's okay.
So just to come back for a second, and then we'll return to Jacob's work. I just want to say thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Jacob for presenting that material in a very impressively compact way. And again, we have time now to talk about it in our informal discussion. I won't be using the breakout room since we only have one person. We'll leave it in the main session, so there's no need to join a breakout room. We would love your suggestions. Definitely suggestions for publicity. As you know, we had a slightly smaller turnout today than usual, despite having two very good presentations. And so your ideas about ways to improve our PR would be most welcome. We are working on a leadership statement and a goal statement. Reinhardt and I, and we'd like your suggestions for that. And so with that, I would like to close the meeting unless there are specific suggestions. Is there anything, any other business that people would like before we move on to the open discussion with Jacob? No, in that case, I appreciate it. I'm sorry, Jacob, but we have to formally close the meeting for 4 o'clock. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for participating. I will return the floor to Jacob for the discussion session, and that will stay in the main room, and we can continue till 4:30.